What is up, everybody, and welcome to Nerdgasm. This is one of our final matches in round one. I'm the Black-Minded Brooklyn Vale, and we have a very interesting match today in the Nerdgasm realms. We have the Sandman, Sandy Robinson, taking on the Wolf, El Lobo, Jim Green, whatever you want to call him. Like I said, this is one of our final matches in round one. Two seasoned competitors in Fandom. But we'll see how they do debate-wise. Before we get to recommenders, we had to introduce our judges. First off, my other partner in crime, Cody, was unavailable because I'm sure he had to go to some Boston Red Sox fan meeting. Caleb Coho. Caleb, how are you doing today, and how do you feel about our competitors?
I'm doing good. I am very excited about this match. Obviously, I've seen them both play trivia. I've seen them both show what they know. Now it's all about how well they're going to be able to argue what they know and what they believe. So it's going to be a fun one.
All right. And joining us well today, making his Nerdgasm debut as a judge, you can find him on Saturdays with Rhyme and Reason and Second Look whenever it comes back on Take 3. Matt Kearns. Matt, how you feeling to be over on the multiplex side of things?
I'm feeling different than Take 3 side of things, so there's that. It's a bunch of people saying on Google Hangout call, and we're about to debate really heatedly about fake stuff we all care about. Much like Rhyme and Reason, which you can find every Saturday on Take 3 Productions. Episodes start airing back in February of this year.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Nico, for getting a little early in on the plugs.
Okay, you know what, sir? You can hit me below the belt, but that's really below the belt, sir.
Okay, we'll edit that part out. We're going to go to our competitors now, starting out with one Jim Green. Jim, you have competed in this round before. I honestly forget if you won or you lost. But how do you feel about going up against Sandy?
I beat Eli McKay.
Oh, you got
put some respect on that W that he has.
I'm told by I'll be told by our backroom that you did get the W. But how do you feel going up against Sandy?
I feel like I'm gonna talk a lot. That's why I'm filling up my water bottle right here. But yeah, Sandy is a noble competitor. So with a love of hydration and H2O. So debating's not really my thing. I just played in it against Eli because Coho was like playing this, and I was like, whatever, okay. And then you were like playing this. I was like, okay, whatever. So I'm ready to go. So yeah, let's just fuck it.
All right, let's just fuck it. Jim Green, 2019. Your opponent today is one Sandy Sandman Robinson. Sandy, you have had a plethora of speed round experience in the late night Take 3 mini speed round debate champion of the full metal and multiplex fan communities in the world. You are a two-time champion in that realm. But how do you feel about doing prepped debates in your realm of nerd culture?
I feel extraordinarily excited that Jim and I have something completely in common because I was roped into this by Cody in Brooklyn saying, hey, you guys, you should do this. Come on in, join this. And yeah. Am I prepared? I hope so. The two people that I would normally go to help for debate prep run this freaking league. So I couldn't go there. So I'm sort of just doing this off the cuff. I hope that I make a good showing. I hope that Jim and I are good competitors and we put on a good show. That's really what I'm looking forward to. So yeah, happy to be here.
All right, so how it is going to work is the competitors drafted categories from the plethora of Nerdgasm topics. We gave them topics to draft. They drafted. We gave them the questions, and then they drafted answers based on their rankings and whatnot. Each prepped question begins with a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute free form, followed by a 4-second closing. The only rules are no filibustering, don't be a dickhead, and no touching of the hair or face. We're going to go right into it with question number one. And question number one is in the realm of animated heroes. And the question that we gave them is, what is the worst DC animated film? And we have in parentheses here, it does not have to be theatrically released, so these can be the straight-to-DVD ones, which I think there are pretty good ones in the mix, but this is the worst one. So we are going to start off with Mr. Jim Green. You have 1 minute of an opening argument. Time begins whenever you start talking.
My opening argument will not be very in-depth as will the rest of them, because I want to be debating. My movie simply is the 2007 shit show PG-13 straight to DVD release of Superman Doomsday, directed by Bruce Timm, Brandon Vetti, and Laura Montgomery. That's the movie I'm picking. I'm going to describe in the open debate that it's a complete shit show. So send it over to Sandy now.
Alrighty, so we have Superman Doomsday on the table. Sandy, you have 1 minute of freeform, or it's not 1 minute freeform, 1 minute opening. What movie are you saying is the worst DC animated film?
I am also picking something that I think is an absolute garbage shit show of a movie, and that movie is the Killing Joke.
I love that.
That's a very, very. Then you never have ever read the graphic novel, because if you read the graphic novel and watched this movie, you would be disappointed to a point of wanting to rip up the graphic novel and write the writers of this particular movie into an absolute demolishment on social media. This movie is garbage. They took an absolute great graphic novel and they turned it into a sexist piece of shit. This movie deserves to be thrown into the same trash heap as the ET video game for Atari, because it is that shitty. But we will get more into that once we get into our debate. I'm all done.
All right, ending in early fashion, we call that the Ryan Permison approach. We'll see how that pays off. You guys have 5 minutes of freeform. The only thing, I will give you a verbal 1 minute warning, just so whatever time's winding down. So whenever you hear that, just continue on like nothing happened. So let's get it on.
So Sandy, let me ask you a question here. Who is on the voice cast of Superman Doomsday?
I don't care.
Exactly. Thank you. It's a.
But I don't. But I also.
Cast. It's
but
a
I also.
voice
But I
cast.
also. But I also don't care who's the voice cast of the Killing Joke either. I want to see a good story when I'm doing that. Not the voices mean nothing to me. It's the animation and the actual story that matters. And Doomsday's story is just fine. Killing Joke took an existing property, slashed it, made it X-rated practically, put an R on it instead, and put it out into theaters where it got absolutely critically slammed into non-existent. Superman Doomsday, I watched it recently. It's pretty enjoyable. Does it take some liberties? It does, but it's still enjoyable. Killing Joke is just bloody and sexist to the max. There is no part of this movie that doesn't make the graphic novel worse by watching this movie. Alan Moore has said it flat out that he didn't like the movie. He didn't like the book either, because it was the way it was drawn. He didn't like it. He didn't like the way the story went. And so the own creator has said, no. Has anybody in Batman or Superman Doomsday come out and said this movie is bad?
No. That would be because Superman Doomsday was a straight-to-DVD release, whereas The Killing Joke got this big theatrical release because it's The Killing Joke. And for the record, you have The Killing Joke, at least The Killing Joke is bad. I'm not debating whether or not it's a good movie or not. But at least The Killing Joke, you get Mark Hamill's Joker, incredible. You get Kevin Conroy's Batman, incredible. You get the legendary Tara Strong being Barbara, which Barbara sucks in that movie. But at least
legendary Tara Strong?
Yes, legendary Tara Strong.
You just told us that you love this movie, and now you're saying, yeah, it's bad. Really? Are you gonna flip flop? Are you gonna flip flop on Doomsday through that? It sucks, but you might like it a little bit later.
The Joke is a singular graphic novel, and it's the backstory of the Joker, whatever. And it gets 77 minutes, and they had to kind of fluff it, whatever, and did it poorly. But who cares? It also sets up Barbara as Oracle, but
what it really sets up is Barbara is Batman's sex puppet, and and then the Joker's sex puppet after that. They completely stripped Barbara Gordon of any kind of femininity that she had and made her just an absolute toy for these guys to play with. It was a complete disgrace that they over-sexualized her and assaulted us with the assumption that the Joker goes in there and instead of taking pictures like he does in the graphic novel, that he goes in there and rapes her instead. So that is horrible, horrible, horrible. In Superman Doomsday, we get Doomsday. We get
Oh,
B,
we get
the
Doomsday.
fight. We get
Doomsday
then
for
we get
no time at all.
but
The
it doesn't
movie is
matter.
called Superman. Does it matter?
Doomsday, because
It's
every
Doomsday,
event after
and it has
Doomsday
no-
leaves
there
is
no
focused
time
because of that.
for the titular character of the movie. It's like, oh, here's Doomsday for 5 seconds. Oh, and then here's Doomsday killing, and then here's Doomsday killing Clark,
Yeah,
which
and
is a shitty fight.
And I
then-
knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to bring up time. Doomsday's actually in the movie for 28 minutes and 37 seconds. I taped it. I timed it. And he's there for that long. Most of that is the fight between him and Superman.
Exactly.
And that is what everybody wants to see. Because the rest of the story, the return of Superman,
is a fight. Is the fight? Which fair enough.
You have to get the return of Superman in there. You can't just
you
let
have
it go
to get
away.
the return of Superman in there. But you know, you got to cut
You think
out.
that should just be 5 minutes?
All right, pause. We are at the 1 minute warning. Sandy, you are getting really close to filibustering. We try to get a nice back and forth. So just let Jim let him say his point, and then I'll explain it later off scenes in between the questions.
Okay.
But just 1 minute left. No, it's fine. No, I just wanted to. It's very easy for it to happen without you noticing it. So, 1 minute left.
And Sandy, you're right. They do have the Rise of Superman in there, but instead of it featuring Steel, Cyborg Superman, Superboy, Eradicator, and then Mongol and Hal Jordan are all part of the Rise of Superman story, but they're like, nah, we're just not going to use any of them because we want to build up we want to build up all this other stuff for Superman so we can make more movies of this shit. Instead of actually having all these awesome heroes that are in it in the comic, this long thing, they took something that should have been 2 parts and squished it down to 75 minutes, where they just kind of like stretched out the Killing Joke poorly, but they stretched it out.
But the simple fact is that your movie was a direct-to-video movie, so they didn't dump a ton of money into it, so they couldn't put a whole bunch of people into it. They put the basic storyline all the way through, and that's what we got. In The Killing Joke, they took a story, slashed it, made it R-rated, and put it out into theaters where
where it made its money back.
Time. All right. So that's a good 5 minutes of freeform. We are now going to go to Sandy first. So Sandy, you have 45 seconds just to wrap up your arguments, wrap them up into a nice little Vikings jersey, and present them to Keiko.
Okay, feminists hate this movie. Feminists hate The Killing Joke because of how they treated Barbara Gordon and how they made her a sexualized object instead of an actual character. The beginning of the film, Batman and Barbara have this father-daughter type relationship, and then they have sex on the roof. It's not a good movie. It's not a great adaptation. It doesn't even tell the proper story from the source material that it had. It used the original character voices. I get that. Okay, whatever. The story itself is what makes this movie bad.
Okay. All right. Jim, you have 45 seconds. Wrap up your argument into a nice New York Rangers jersey and present it to Backrooms.
Okay, give me a second. Superman Doomsday is significantly worse than The Killing Joke, simply because The Killing Joke extends the story, which also the points that Sandy has is, feminists don't like that Barbara Gordon is made into a sex puppet, but Superman Doomsday just destroys all of these extra awesome characters after the actual death of Superman and then the rise of Superman. They condense all 4, 5, 6 of these awesome characters, and they're just like, oh no, here's a clone of Clark. And that's just going to be the end of the movie. And we're going to wrap that up in like 10 minutes. Here you go. Cool. Thanks. Superman Doomsday takes a much longer story, condenses it down into a piece of shit. Killing Joke just took, at least they had the story of Joker's actual origin. Superman Doomsday just destroys everything in the actual comic book.
Time. All right. Interesting arguments brought up by both competitors. I was actually quite surprised at how there was essentially a contrast in overall themes. I am going to go to Matt first. Matt, based on the arguments provided, who gets your point and why?
I know. You do this to me on late night as well. Whenever it's a really difficult debate, you're always like, and I'm going to throw it to them. Matt first. I think this debate was interesting. I don't even think you guys intended to do this, but it's like two sides of the same coin of like you have they're both adaptations. One is expanding and one is sort of diminishing. Sandy kind of started to lose me a little bit in his closing with the feminists don't like what they did with Barbara Gordon. However, during the freeform, I think he got more to say about his project. I think bringing up the Al Moore stuff, that Al Moore didn't like this movie. Overall, I think Sandy just had a better, from opening to closing, he had a better argument of the things they added to the movie from in the adaptation only made it worse, and that overall take away the actors in the story doesn't work. And I think Sandy did like that, even though it's a very close battle, but Sandy just had a stronger argument throughout. That's why I'm giving Sandy the point.
Okay, I am going to go next. I thought there were great points brought up by both. Sandy really saying on how the Killing Joke is essentially like not overrated in the traditional sense of it, how they just kind of threw on an R rating, made it X, and made it like more violent and sexualized more than it needed to be. How it was essentially a waste of Barbara Gordon, how she was sort of pawned off and really devalued as a character throughout the series. Jim also brought up some really good points on how he was really able to say how Superman Doomsday was really compressed, and how the show was split into two separate things and whatnot. I think my point to Jim, because he was also able to say why the Killing Joke was good and was able to sort of convince me on both. And I was more sold on why why Superman Doomsday was a little more just convoluted and mixed with the addition of all these extra characters that we didn't really need. So I'm gonna go to Jim, which means Caleb. It comes down to you based on the arguments provided. Who gets your point and why?
Sandy had a really good freeform run for me. He did a really good job of hammering like at the Alan Moore doesn't even like this movie sort of thing. But Jim came in the clutch in the closing, and he at the very end, I can't remember the exact thing he said, but it was basically about you took Killing Joke and you stretched it, but at least you got the Joker's origin and you at least got the iconic parts of that book. Whereas with Superman Doomsday, they condensed it down so that the iconic moments are diminished entirely. And by saying that, I think Jim sealed it for me. So I'm giving my point slightly to Jim.
All right. So with that being said, Jim does strike blood first, going up 1-0. Also, now that the points have been made and whatnot, Tara Strong is probably second to June Foray as like one of the most iconic female voice actresses ever. So, all right. So that leads us into question number 2. The category that was drafted was Studio Ghibli. That is a category that Cody and I do not know as well. So we decided to go just a little bit more broader for this question. We just said straightforward, what is the best Studio Ghibli movie? Sandy, you are going to be going first on this one. You have 1 minute of an opening argument. Time begins whenever you start talking.
So my pick for the best Studio Ghibli film is Grave of the Fireflies, released in 1988 and directed by Asawa Takahata. It is, I will flat out tell you right now that by the end of this, I was crying so hard that I could not grab enough tissues to stop it. It is one of the most emotional films I've ever seen, let alone one of the most emotional animated movies that I've ever seen. The story is ridiculously fantastic. They take movie making to an entirely new level on this. And so, yeah, so once again, 1988's Grave of the Fireflies is my pick.
All right, perfect. Jim, we'll go to you now. 1 minute of 1 minute of opening.
My selection here was, I think, the obvious one. In debates past, I usually go for the underdog like Sandy has here, but this time I'm going for the heavy hitter, and it's 2001's Spirited Away. Yeah, it's just, I don't know how much more I can say in the opening. So yeah, 2001's Spirited Away, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, is my selection.
All right, it's very short, very sweet opening argument. That might be the shortest opening that we've ever had in the Nerdgasm round 1. We got 5 minutes of free form. Let's go.
So, Sandy, we're here in Freeform again, and I would just like to say that you made a nice choice, but it's not even the best movie in its double feature that it debuted with, which was My Neighbor Totoro in 1988. The My Neighbor Totoro actually got all of the both of them are acclaimed. I will give you that. It's a very acclaimed movie, but the one that actually ended up shining out of those two is My Neighbor Totoro. So. Your movie's not even the best out of the two that it was released with, because your double feature there had the better director.
Well, I'll give you your opinion that you say that it isn't the best movie that came out of that time. Well, facts are relatable, but this is actual. Roger Ebert picked this as his favorite animated movie of all time. And
so that's opinion of Roger.
And he even stopped short of calling it animated. He called it one of his favorite colored films of all time, because he didn't want to lower it by calling it animation. This movie flat out changed the way people had to think about animation. Animation going forward was all about children, and then later on it became a little bit more depth, and there was a little bit more sadness and stuff like that. It could make you cry, but it never made you feel grief. This movie absolutely puts you into despair when you see it. The troubles that these two kids go through and have is most people wouldn't be able to survive that. That's how good this movie is, that you feel exactly what they're doing. Your movie is just more famous. It's not better. There's a difference.
It's definitely better. It's definitely better. Because, well, for one, mine is an original story. Yours is based off of a work by, I'm not Japanese, but I'll try my best, Akiyuki Noasaka. It's based off of I believe that's a book. And it's World War II. It's, after World War II and things that Japan was dealing with after World War II and the bombings, of course, done by us. # sorry world. But, Spirited Away, yes, it is a much more uplifting film because it's more aimed towards children. Even then, it still has its kind of emotional heartstrings where she doesn't like her parents, and then as soon as she loses her parents and they turn into pigs, spoiler alert, as soon as they turn into pigs, she's like, oh no, wait, I want my family again. I need my family again after she goes into this magical world. So I think just the plot in general, obviously it's going to be a heavier when you're dealing with post World War II or any of the great wars, but I think the plot in general in Spirited Away is a little stronger.
And Spirited Away is a great cartoon. There is no doubt about that. It's a great cartoon. I'm talking about the difference between a cartoon and an actual film that's animated. Grave of the Fireflies takes sorrow to a totally new definition. It follows these kids and their hardships, not when you lose or like, oh, I don't want to play with my parents anymore. Oh, crap, they feed me and they house me. I got to go back to them. I want them so bad. They don't have parents because they were killed. Even their own mother wasn't around to help them. They had to go out and scrounge for everything. The sister dies of starvation. She dies of hunger. And then the brother dies after that of heartache because he felt so guilty about feeding himself first instead of her. It is the difference between an animated film or a cartoon and an animated film. Yours movie, good, just didn't change animation, and this one did.
Didn't change animation. It did win the second ever best animated film at the Academy Awards, and Spirited Away, for the record, Japan's Oscars, the Japan Film Awards, it just won straight up best film. It didn't win best animated film. It won straight up best film. And also, you do have your two strong characters, Saita and Setsuko. Those are two great characters. But Spirited Away, you just have, boom, Haku, Yubana, Chichiro, you got Kamaji, the guy with 6 arms, you got the River Spirit, you got Zabana, you got No Face. No Face is the most iconic, Miyazaki character, after Totoro or maybe Kiki? No Face is one of the biggest characters that has been in any Ghibli film.
But everything that you're saying right now is a cartoon. It's fantastical. It's out there. This is something that you can sink your teeth into. It's not just everything that. And speaking of best film awards, yeah, I will flat out admit that they should have nominated this and this should have won for best picture, period. but it didn't, because that's the American Film Institute, not the world's.
Time. All right. So, interesting free-form. We now go into closing arguments. Jim, we're going to start with you first. 25 seconds. I'll move your argument into a nice little New York Giants jersey and present it to myself.
I think Spirited Away has the best. It's an original story, so I gave it plus for that. And Cindy brought up just the American Film Academy. I did bring up that, so it won the best American Film Academy, and it won the best Asian film. It won best Japanese film. Everyone all over the world loved it. My characters, I have all these great characters in it, and the bathhouse that Chichiro actually goes to in the main of the movie is just so vibrant and alive, and there's so much great to it. And Grave of the Fireflies is, yes, it pulls at you emotionally and is dark, and but it's a lot of death, doom, and gloom. And in general, I think Spirited Away is more relatable to everybody, and Grave of the Fireflies is more like an underrated, like, Pinky Out piece that people love.
Time. All right, cool. Sandy, your closing arguments. You got 45 seconds. Wrap it up and present it to the judges accordingly.
So, Grave of the Fireflies doesn't need to be popular to be the best Studio Ghibli movie that's out there. Spirited Away, popular. Everybody loves it. This is just flat out a better movie than that one is. I have great characters in mine too. There's just not 300 of them. I've got Seta and Sasuko. They're the brother and the sister. They work so hard and they go through so much hardships in this movie. Spirited Away, it's uplifting, it's happy, it's great, but so are about 15 million other cartoons that are out there. This took a different direction. It took it from source material, which was a book, but a great book in its own right. This movie did it justice, and it makes you feel more than any movie that you've ever seen in your entire life.
All right. So, interesting closing arguments. We're going to go to Caleb first because his vote was the tiebreaker last time, so we're going to go to you. Based on arguments divided, who gets your point and why?
It's always really difficult to fight against a movie that deals with, like, World War II or a major event like that. So Sandy kind of had the upper hand through the fight based on the pick, but I think Jim did a really good job of fighting up to that by bringing up, accolades, because they traded back and forth on accolades quite a bit, bringing up Roger Ebert and then Oscars and then Japanese film and everything. Sandy had a compelling argument, but I think overall, based on me not having seen either one, I had to go based on who was selling me their movie a little bit better as to what makes it best. And I have to lean slightly to Jim on that based on how he sold me the story. And I didn't really hear too much about Sandy's story, more about the character struggle. So I'm going to go slightly 51-49 Jim.
All right. Matt, we're going to go to you next based on arguments divided. Who gets your point and why?
The first time I kind of disagree with Caleb. Jim gave a great argument. I think he really fought when Sandy brought up a lot of the accolades that came with his film. He kind of really, I could tell he put in the research for this. Like, he was like, it won Japanese and Chinese and the American, but he didn't sell. I have never seen a Studio Ghibli film, so I think I'm really good to pick this. He didn't sell me on wanting to see his film. He kind of just listed off characters, to which I was like, okay, but what about them? Whereas Sandy was able to talk about the characters and their struggles and the emotional attachment you have, and you follow them through the film along with all the accolades, whereas Jim he was able to rebut a lot of stuff Sandy said, but he didn't add on to that, and so I just have to go with Sandy. Which I hate doing because I feel like everyone's going to be like, well, of course Matt did.
All right, so it comes down to me.
Of course Matt did.
Of course, it's going to come down to me. I'm going to break the tie here. So what I really enjoyed was the back and forth on how Jim was essentially not even the best movie from the double feature. Sandy's like, that's just your opinion. And then Sandy brought up the Roger Ebert thing. And then Jim was like, well, that's just somebody's opinion. So I think those things canceled out as well. And then the whole point of Spirited Away is an original movie, whereas whereas A Grave of the Fireflies is an adaptation. Me personally, as the last person to vote, because I know this doesn't influence any other judge, that's a wipeout for me because some of the greatest films ever are adaptations. So those points sort of cancel each other out. It doesn't really matter whether it's original or an adaptation. But for me, I was more sold on Sandy. He was able to sort of break down how it didn't matter if Jim's was an ensemble movie. He got me more sold on the two characters and why I want to follow their journey. I think Jim's concept sounds a lot more interesting, but I was more interested in like really going detail to detail with Sandy's film. So Sandy's going to get the point for me, which means that we are tied 1-1. Yeah. So that takes us into question number 3. The category that was selected was the DCEU / the Worlds of DC, depending on how you want to look at it. And the question that we gave them, this is sort of a pitch question. Whether we get it or not, there's talks of doing a Green Lantern movie. So we wanted to go with the question of who should direct the Green Lantern Corps movie. Jim, you're going to be going Green Lantern Corps. Even though I'm sure it's spelled CORPS.
It is. Hashtag
exactly. English is just a great language. So, Jim, you have 1 minute. Time begins whenever you start talking.
I like to keep my openings super simple, super sweet. I'm going with a man who has directed a comic book film already within the most successful cinematic universe of all time / franchise of all time, and I will be picking Iron Man 3's Shane Black. He also wrote that film. So Iron Man 3's Shane Black is who I will be selecting as my choice for this fight.
Cool. We'll go to Sandy next. Sandy, based on the argument, or not based on the arguments, you're not a judge, you're a competitor. So your opening arguments tell us who should direct the next Green Lantern Corps movie.
I picked a director that is used to and very energetic around action and knows how to direct it very, very well as directing side characters and making those side characters seem more important than the actual main character, and that is director George Miller. George Miller has directed a ton of good movies, but he has not yet directed a comic book movie, and I think that gives him the upper hand. But George Miller is my pick for the Green Lantern Corps movie.
All right. So before we start, I do not want this to turn into which director has the better or worst filmography. I want to hear why your director is the best fit for the Green Lantern, because in previous
filmography does play into that.
Exactly, but like I don't want it to turn into.
Don't read their IMDb page to us.
Exactly, because previous times where we've done this question or a similar question, it just turns into. It just turns into, oh, yours is a worse actor. You know what I mean? I do want to hear why a director is the best fit for the Green Lantern star.
I'm just going to tell you now, I'm going to bring up movies that they've done in the past, but it's as part of a larger argument. I'm just going to say I'm going to bring up the IMDb credits, but
exactly. I just don't want that to turn into the overall theme of the.
It's not just going to be Mad Max 2 is bad, and that's George Miller. So yeah.
Exactly. Anyways, we're going to go back in here.
Well, it's not.
Wait, go back in here.
It's example.
We're going to go back in here.
I thought you were counting down, Brooklyn. Jesus.
No, I'm editing this one, and it's easier for me whenever I literally just see the fucking fist up in the air. So
okay.
All right, guys. So we are into the 5 minutes of free form. Your time begins now.
Sandy, you just brought up an interesting point. George Miller has never directed a comic book movie. Why is that?
George Miller was actually set and attached to the Justice League movie, but turned it down when he saw what the DCEU people were doing to it. So he backed off.
So the people that he would have to work with again to make this film are the people that he couldn't get along with the first time.
Actually, those people are
he could
gone.
not get along with them 10 years ago, but he's going to get along with them.
Those people 10 years ago are actually gone. And George Miller has the experience, has the pedigree, has the movie resume, and the serious critical acclaim that one Shane Black does not have at all.
Okay, so Mad Max
nothing.
Fury Road gets some Oscars and cool. He writes Babe and Happy Feet and cool, whatever.
Pictures of Eastwick, Dead Calm, Lorenzo's Oil, Babe, Pig and City, Happy Feet. You are just scratching the absolute.
So your movie, your Green Lantern movie is gonna be like a Mad like it's gonna be like 2011 where it's just like. It's a pretty picture. It's pretty pictures, but with nothing, no substance there. Like, yes.
So you just absolutely gave us the synopsis for Iron Man 3. An absolute Marvel MCU movie that means nothing to the MCU, but has absolutely nothing to do with Iron Man either. It has to do with a bogus story that wasn't an actual MCU movie. It shouldn't even be counted in the MCU. It should be retconned because it's that bad. It's not a good MCU movie.
It's not that bad at all.
But back? No, he has not.
Okay,
I'm a good director
because they got the Russos, but we're not talking about the MCU. We're talking about what? Okay, so your movie is
your only
credit. Nice little, your nice little spectacle that's gonna be like kind of pretty and stuff. That's cool. What Shane Black actually? My Green Lantern movie is gonna be kind of what Warner Brothers has said. It's been rumored that they want. They didn't actually say it. I'll say that. What they kind of want a buddy cop type of film with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart because they want to have multiple Green Lanterns and working together. And so you want a guy that's going to write that type of film. And Shane Black has wrote this buddy cop movie. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Lethal Weapon. He wrote that.
Yeah,
and there's this other one. There's this other one called Long Kiss Goodbye and The Nice Guys.
Yeah,
The Nice Guys. He wrote all of those, and he directed The Nice Guys, which is an incredible movie.
The Nice Guys was critically panned, and it wasn't. It lasted in the theaters for about 2 weeks. Nobody went and saw that movie not because of the stars, but because Shane Black was attached to it. He's got the same repertoire as, and I don't care if you bring up Glass now because it's an absolute shit show. I've seen it, so blow me. It is horrible, and he's got the same pedigree as M. Night Shyamalan does. Nobody's gonna touch him, especially after Shane Black's last movie, which is The Predator, which blew. George Miller actually has done a buddy cop movie, and that was called Mad Max Fury Road. Between Mad Max and Furiosa, but Jon Stewart. You don't think that George Miller can direct a Jon Stewart, Hal Jordan movie that they're teammates? He'll make it gritty. He'll make it dirty. He'll use practical effects instead of what Shane Black does and uses CGI everywhere in his comic book movie. And that was the problem with the last Green Lantern movie, was that it was too CGI, but George Miller uses practical effects and he gets those dirty, gritty movies, those fighting movies, those core type movies where you're absolutely in dire circumstances. He can write that movie. Shane Black cannot.
Except for when he wrote Lethal Weapon, whatever. So we're now classifying Mad Max Fury Road between Furiosa and Max as a buddy cop. Okay, sure, why not? But you can use practical effects and then have very nice, pretty practical effects, and then the story underneath it. With your pitched idea of doing it nice and dark, which with the previous 6 DCE movies that tried to do the dark underlining of it was terrible when they tried to just be like, oh, here's Wonder Woman's the one that isn't super mega dark, but here's Batman, but it's dark. I meant Superman. I meant Man of Steel.
Yeah, of course.
Superman, but it's dark now. Batman versus Superman, but it's really dark now. Justice League, but it's really dark now. So we're gonna fire that guy, bring in Joss Whedon, because the dark thing works so well for WB.
I didn't say dark. I said dirty, and I said gritty, and I said a core.
Which is dark. It's
not. Dirty and gritty has nothing to do with dark. If you've ever seen Mad Max Fury Road, it's light. Not dark. It's dirty. It's gritty. It's in your face. It's absolutely what the world needs out of a Green Lantern movie, instead of pretty. Oh, let's see all the nice little Iron Man costumes flying around. Ooh. Nobody wants that.
Time. All right, excellent. You guys ended right on point. That's what I like to see. So we now move into the closing arguments. Sandy, you're going to be going first. 45 seconds. Should wrap the argument into a nice little Superman comic, because that's what Matt likes.
Not wrong.
All right, as I stated before, he was attached to do Justice League, but you know what? As a smart director, he realized that it was a shit show at the time and stumped out of it. You know what? His perfect time to come back now that the studio has changed leadership. He can absolutely do the Green Lantern movie that he wants to do. Like I said, he's more into practical effects than Shane Black is, so he'll make the movie look beautiful instead of cartoonish. He's also got a better track record than Shane Black is. He's more experienced in movie making, so he won't be pushed around by the studio. He will have the absolute time to do the movie that he wants to do with the people that he wants to do it in the time that he needs to do it and make a good movie. He hasn't just done that. He can add. He just doesn't have Mad Max Fury Road. He has a bunch of movies that have feeling and heart. That's what he'll bring.
Time. Excellent. Jim, 45 seconds for a closing argument. Time begins whenever you start talking.
The basis of Sandy's argument against Shane Black is, oh, look at his Rotten Tomatoes page. Oh, look what critics say about it. But The Nice Guys works incredibly as a buddy cop film. He wrote Lethal Weapon, which is, one of the greatest buddy cop films of all time. My Green Lantern film that I'm thinking of is a buddy cop relationship between John and Hal, which, that needs to be the core of the movie, not like, oh, look at the effects. You need to build in from the relationship of the characters out, which I think Shane Black can do with his writing, which he didn't really do with The Predator, which is kind of why it sucked. But that, I think Sandy is focusing too much on, oh, George Miller will make it pretty, and then we'll work down to, oh, then he can write the characters. For me, I'm saying start with Hal, start with John, and then build out from there. We can do the rest of the effects later.
All right, that is time. I do apologize in advance. Molly has some hot takes. She thinks that what's his name? Who's a really bad director? I don't know.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay needs to direct the Green Lantern Corps. So Molly, we'll get to you. We'll get to your arguments later. I'm going to go first. This was pretty close coming into the freeform. What got it for me was in the closing arguments, and Jim really nailed it home. I think he was really able to elaborate on his pitch while wrapping it up as well, to see or able to sort of bump it up, almost like adding a little bit of frosting to the cake. I think what he's able to do to sort of tie in Shane Black with the core elements of Green Lantern Corps gets me the point. But I am going to go to Matt next. Matt, basic arguments provided. Who gets your point? Why?
I think the freeform was really interesting. It kind of divulged into like DC dark or light. I'm glad that didn't last for too long and they brought it back. This was really kind of one in the closing for me, because I thought the arguments for both of them during their openings and the freeform was really strong. Sandy did have a great point about with the changing in DC, how this could be a good time for George Miller to sort of come in and direct. But I have to concede my point to Jim that he talked more about sort of the story he thinks the Green Lantern Corps movie could be and why Shane Black fits with that, whereas Sandy was kind of describing more of the Warner Brothers stunt show that George Miller could direct, which is not bad. I could see that stunt show, of course. But yeah, so I'm giving my point to Jim.
All right, so that means that Jim does get the point. Caleb, your vote did not count, but how would you have swayed?
Watch him pick Sandy.
I think stop reading my mind. No, I'm kidding. But Sandy, I did a really good job of countering a lot of Jim's points, but Jim really came in the clutch in the closing with the what she's been doing all day. I guess because I've said that 3 times now. But he came in with that closing about story, and I think that just kind of sealed it. So I would have gone Jim also.
All right, so Jim does take the lead going into our speed round format. And to quickly go over the rules of speed round, the competitors did draft categories, but they are not aware of the questions. They have 40 seconds of opening, followed by 30 seconds of closing. This is first come, first serve, so if I do hear you first, you're going to be going first. The first category that you picked is Disney animation, and your question is as follows. Which was the better film at the turn of the century? Emperor's New Groove or Tarzan?
Tarzan.
I heard Tarzan first.
Okay, I'm going to select on my own accord The Emperor's New Groove.
All right, so Sandy arguing Tarzan, Jim arguing Emperor's New Groove. Sandy, you have 40 seconds for your opening. Time begins whenever you start talking.
Disney's Tarzan is one of the more underrated Disney movies that is out there. Not only does it have a great cast, it also has a very, very great soundtrack done by the great Phil Collins. It tells the long told story of where Tarzan came from and how he helps the jungle and what he gets out of it, and how he also meets Jane and then fights with her in order to keep the jungle safe from poachers and bad guys in general. This movie deserves more credit than it gets. It is definitely one of the more underrated movies that I think exists, and I truly believe that it's going to be the better movie.
Time. All right, interesting. Jim, we're going to go to you next. 40-second opening argument.
Quick timeout. We have a second thing. We have a closing, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. All right. So Jim, we go into your closing arguments.
No, not closing arguments.
Not your closing arguments. I'm trying it again. All right, Jim, we now go into your opening arguments. You have 40 seconds. Time begins whenever you start talking.
The Emperor's New Groove is a great original story, and it also builds a lot of character within Cusco, who is the Emperor. And, he starts off as the kind of like Emperor who's kind of a dick, and don't throw off his groove. Don't throw off his groove. And then Yzma turns him into a llama. And the hilarity ensues, and you see that Cusco build as he's turned into a llama, and he's like starting to realize he's like a terrible person with being with that character whose name escapes me, and his family throughout the movie. You have a great voice cast. David Spade being like his best, probably his best thing ever, and then you got Patrick Warburton as the conch, who is just like weird and great.
Time. All right. We now go into the rebuttal round. Sandy, you have 30 seconds. Time begins whenever you start talking.
Jim made the point of bringing up the cast again, so I mean I'll bring up my cast for this one here. Tony Goldwyn as Tarzan, Minnie Driver as Jane Porter, Glenn Close, Lance Henriksen, Nigel Hawthorne, Rosie O'Donnell, Wayne Knight, Eric Von Detten. I mean, come on, if you're looking for an all-star Oscar caliber cast, that's what it is. And The Emperor's New Groove just doesn't get it done. If it did, it would be in the conversation more. Tarzan is in the conversation. It just should be in the conversation more because it's a better movie than Emperor's New Groove is. That's it.
Time. All right. Jim, we now move into your closing arguments. Time begins whenever you start talking. 30 seconds.
Okay. I brought up the names of the actors in Emperor's New Groove to show that these are some of their best performances, not just here are awesome names. Also, Tarzan, as Sandy stated earlier, is just it's an okay retelling of the legend of Tarzan, which has been done and done again. The only reason that Tarzan is actually even should be considered is just because Genesis's Phil Collins is absolutely amazing on this soundtrack. Whereas I think Emperor's New Groove, you don't even care who did the soundtrack because the actual movie is better.
All right. So we now... This got a little bit more interesting, more than I anticipated. So I'm going to go to Matt first. Matt, based on the arguments provided, who gets your point and why?
I'll give my point to Sandy. I just heard more about why Tarzan is a better movie than The Emperor's New Groove. Simple as that.
Caleb, I'm going to go to you next.
I actually got to go the opposite way. The only thing I really heard from Sandy was the soundtrack and underrated. Jim did that, and that Tarzan's underrated, and I think Jim did a really good job of countering the story and bringing up the characters in Emperor's New Groove that are a little bit more memorable. So I'm going to actually go with Jim.
All right. So once again, I think this was one of the closing arguments. My thing is, if Sandy was able to tackle Emperor's New Groove a little bit more, because Jim's opening was very story heavy, if he was able to sort of like tackle the story, he unfortunately doesn't get my point, which means Jim gets the point, which means that your winner advancing on to the quarterfinals is the Wolf, Jim Green. Great match by both competitors. A nice back and forth. Does end in the final score of 3-1. I'm going to go now to some post-match interviews. Jim, you were able to win it there in the speed round. You were not thrilled to get Emperor's New Groove, but you were able to pull it out. How do you feel about your performance today?
I unfortunately have to go speak to my manager. Coho, take it away.
Speaking on behalf of Mr. Green, I can't really speak to a testament of his arguments or preparation because I had no involvement in such, so I can't really speak to that. Speaking to his performance, Jim came in with a lot of solid points. I could see where he was going with every argument in terms of where he came with the concept of his arguments. Sandy put up a really, really good fight. These were very even arguments in terms of each round and round and round. Sandy definitely brought it. It was not an easy fight, and it came down to just some of the little closers that Jim had and the little barbs he was able to throw in the fourth quarter that sealed him his victory.
All right, Sandy. I'm gonna go to you next. Unfortunately, you're just unable to extend the fight there. How do you feel about your performance today? I think there was a great back and forth by both you and Jim.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. If you were to, I mean, you're currently out of the tournament right now, but if you were to come back at an Nerdgasm, is there any opponents that you would have in mind? Anybody you think you'd want to take on?
Not really.
All right. Short and sweet.
Poor Matt.
Kind of interesting there, but we'll see how this goes. Matt, I'm going to go to you next. How did you feel about the match today? I mean, obviously, unfortunately, Sandy was unable to get the W, but I think it was once again. I think
You know what? Here's the thing. Speaking on my partner's behalf, Sandy didn't want to win this fight. Sandy has more to do. Sandy didn't want to win. You saw in the post fight, he didn't care. He didn't care. That's how he gets what you and Cody are doing. He has more important things to care about, like Rhyme and Reason, which comes back to Take 3 Saturday, starting in February. He has more important things to care about, like Late Night with Take 3, which starts episodes up Thursday nights on Take 3. He just has more things to care about than that beard.
Is this a potential heel turn for Sandy? I never thought I would guess it.
You know what? Here's the thing. Okay, Sandy, heel, face, aglet, whatever part of the shoe you want to talk about. Sandy doesn't care. He didn't care about it. Okay, he didn't care. I care, but that's because I'm a loser. Until I start competing in Nerdgasm at some point, and then I'm a winner. Probably not, but. Yeah, Sandy just has more important things to do. So back to you, bro. However, I had quite a fun time being here. This was my first Nerdgasm thing, which the name, I thought this was going to be something way different, but, you know, it went
you and Sandy both. When I brought Sandy on for a dance-off, he was quite disappointed because there was no dancing in the actual dance itself.
Dude, what's with the false names you're coming up with here? No, this was a ton of fun.
It's a marketing ploy. You got to learn it. So.
It was. This was a ton of fun. I hope to come back and to hopefully maybe debate one day, but to judge more would also be a lot of fun because Jim and Sandy really gave a lot of great arguments.
All right. So that is going to wrap things up today. We're going to quickly do our plugs. So to one of our competitors today, Sandy Robinson, great performance today. Unfortunately, they were able to get the W. Where can the cool kids of the world find you?
You guys can find me all over Full Metal Trivia. We're setting up our matches that are recording now to drop next week for Nico's charity event, so make sure you check those out and donate as much as possible. You can find me on Saturdays with my partner Matt Kearns talking about Rhyme and Reason, all the things you guys should be talking about but aren't. You guys can see me late night with Take 3 with the majority of the people on this crew here, where we have a great time. And other than that, Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook at srobinson1799. Thanks for having me.
To one of my co-judges today, Caleb Coho, where can the cool kids of the world find you?
You can find me and Jim on Multiplex right here. I run Fandom Fight. He runs Fandom TV. And yeah, that's where you can find us.
to our other judge today, Matt Kearns. Where can the cool kids of the world find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Kearns_Matthew. You can also find me here on Multiplex. I'm going to be competing in Fandom teams with my buddy Malcolm, Team Timeless. But if you really like listening to me, you can find me mostly over at Take 3 Productions. I host 2 shows, Rhyme and Reason and Second Look. And I'm also on Late Night a lot.
All right, and to Cody, who I guess in the state of Missouri, it's completely acceptable to show up to work an hour late. Where can people find you like on time?
Well, if I was here, Sandy would have won. Disrespectful. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I didn't hear all of that. But you can find me on Take 3 Productions and over here. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun doing Nerdgasm, and I can't wait to see how this tournament goes, and I can't wait to see how the regular season, because we got some fun matchups coming your way.
And last but definitely not least, I'm the Black Lantern Rook and Bale. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @BK10, the number, not the word. On Take 3 Productions, running not 1 but 2 shows: Shootbox Trivia, Music Trivia, Debate, and Countdown. We should check out this season that has already started in February. And Late Night with Take 3, a Top of the Pop Culture podcast show. As of recording this, our first episode will be January 31st, our Super Bowl episode with a potential special guest. We're going to wait till things are a little more set in stone. And right here on Multiplex, running Nerdgasm with Cody Newberry, who's actually not wearing. Actually, no, he is wearing Boston Red Sox. So the streak still lives on of Boston Red Sox memorabilia. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, Multiplex. If you think you can take on Jim Green, you can't quite yet. You got to wait till after the tournament. So for Cody, for Caleb, for Matt, for Sandy, I am the Black Lantern Book and Veil. Cheers. And